listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Great Scott, keep away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Hello.
And Derek.
Hello.
And we will be discussing the new movie from director M. Night Shyamalan, The Visit. But before we get to that, we're going to briefly go through some things we've been watching and talk about some movie news. So to start off with the things we've been watching, Sean, have you watched anything?
Yeah, I was on vacation, so because of that, I kind of had a little bit extra time. I actually watched briefly The Godfather for the first time all the way through, instead of just seeing parts of it on TV. And then Dressed to Kill, Brian De Palma. Michael Caine is in that, and oh my gosh, whoever he was, Nancy Allen, who he was married to at the time, kind of like a sexual thriller, a little bit like a slasher mystery. I really liked it a lot. I like Brian De Palma a whole lot, so I think I'm going to dig into more of his stuff and may eventually do something on him because, you know, with Carrie and everything, he's definitely in that wheelhouse of. Aside from Carrie, like on the edge of horror, you know, almost like you know, obviously he's a huge fan of Hitchcock, so it's kind of that more brand of thriller. And I did watch Fury Road again finally, which that movie's just phenomenal, and I'm probably gonna watch it again after we get finished with this podcast. And then the new A Nightmare on Elm Street, essentially like a prequel or origin story for Freddy Krueger, directed by Nathan Thomas Milner, who was a director on the Volumes of Blood anthology, which I did a video review on. He also did A Wish for the Dead. I caught that at Scarefest last year, which was pretty good as well. And it's called the Confession of Fred Krueger. It's about a half hour long. And you said you watched it too, right, William?
Yes, I just finished it before we started this podcast.
Yeah, I pretty much did too. So what did you think about it?
So I thought that, it was very well done. And like when you watched it, like I was like, 30 minutes, but you know, and it's on YouTube. So that's where you can watch it. We have a post up on the site for it. But when I actually got done watching, I was like, I thought it was still only like 10 minutes in. So it went by pretty quickly just because they, you know, the actor that was playing Fred Krueger was pretty good. I mean, it did one thing that I always complain about in movies where you give motive to a character that was just scary before. But apparently in this case, like they actually pulled from source material, like from the movies and like wasn't it some of the novelizations that went along with the movies? I
think so. And I know for sure, like Wes Craven, he's told this story about the idea of Freddy Krueger as being some hobo and like, I think a red and green sweater that like looked in his window when he was a kid, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why he's homeless in this short film, because it's Wes's original inspiration and not necessarily like the backstory from the movies or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think if you're a big fan of the movies, it's definitely something you should check out because it's kind of adds some color to the character and doesn't really, you know, go against anything that was kind of canonical in the movies.
Yeah, the 30-minute thing, I felt exactly like you because after I got finished watching it, and it's a straight 30 minutes. This isn't like a 30, you know, like when you watch a half-hour TV show, it's really 22 minutes. And with commercial breaks, or if you watch it on Netflix, it's 22 minutes. But it felt shorter than most shows you watch for me.
Yeah.
Which is like a very high honor for any type of media when it feels much shorter than it actually is. It means it's engaging. But yeah, I think it's for anybody who would go see a remake in theaters, like even if they thought it was going to be bad, if you're just a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, it's definitely something to check out, which is a pretty high compliment because for me, if it's not any good, I'm just, you know, I'm not one to watch something just to watch it.
Yeah.
And Kevin Roach, who played Freddy, he did a pretty good. He did a lot of good acting with his eyes too. Because a lot of it is his confession, but they intercut scenes from his confession of kind of flashbacks, essentially, of him telling where he came from and his childhood and a lot of other things. So that breaks it up. So it's not just him in a room talking the whole time.
His mom wasn't a stripper, was she?
But yeah, Sherry Moon Zombie.
And he actually did sit on his porch listening to Love Hurts while she stripped.
Now, there was a reference to Halloween. I think what is it? The rabbit, the matches, Rabbit and Red Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a reference to Halloween, Derek.
And I will say that this was something that I actually enjoyed more than the 2010 remake.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that movie. We don't have to bash it too much. It's just something that kind of fundamentally mishandled the character and the franchise, and this feels more in line with what the original franchise intended to be.
A lot of people, well, I've seen some comments like, please release this on DVD, because people like owning stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously, since it's a fan film, they can't, but it's really good. And I think an awesome thing for them to do is if they did, like, you know, say New Line. Nathan Thomas Milner, he's also an artist and has worked for Horror Hound magazine and Scream Factory doing some cover art. I think it would be super awesome if Miramax, like, or New Line, it's New Line, right? That owns Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
If they like threw this on one of their collections or something, you know, which they recently came out with one with the full collection, but that would be kind of a cool thing for them to do. You know, that probably be pretty hard for them to do because they'd want all this clearance and stuff from actors and everything. But yeah, that's the closest thing. But you know, he's got some connections in the horror world, so it's not like out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, I don't see it hitting DVD ever, though, aside from that possibility.
Yeah, I guess theoretically, if somebody wanted to, you could use one of these services that allows you to download YouTube videos and make your own copy of it. But if you do that, make sure to, you know, if they have like a Patreon or donations or anything set up?
No, because I think they just, it says it's a nonprofit fan film because I think they don't want to get caught up in any type of legal ramifications because it's obviously a passion project. He's posted about it some on his Facebook page about a long time ago, just kind of discussing it. And then I think they found out that there was going to be a big A Nightmare on Elm Street reunion at Horror Hound in Indianapolis, which happened this past weekend. So the goal was to get it done super quickly and premiere it there, which they did. And considering they were under they set a certain constraint for them as far as time goes. Yeah. It turned out really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not. When you see a lot of these fan films on the internet, there's some of questionable quality. I mean, this one definitely is, you know, high quality and you know, everything about it technically, you know, is perfect. So,
yeah, and people, you know, they just, for those big horror icons, they kind of starve for that content, and they're always wanting a new movie or not necessarily a remake, but yeah, a new film or something. So this is kind of a perfect little fan film because you don't have to take it too seriously because some people get caught up whenever, you know, kind of the backstory on characters are changed or anything. So this is a fan film. So I feel like hopefully people won't be too caught up in any of it of ruining Freddy or whatever, which nobody has really. The response has been really warm to it. So it's just a nice little fan film you can watch and enjoy it. And yeah, it rounds out the character pretty well, like you said. Fills in some holes that didn't need to be, but at the same time, they feel very natural and it doesn't feel forced and it doesn't feel like something like, okay, you know, when they make some prequels, it's like we've run out of stories to tell, so let's tell the backstory. You know, and they shoehorn all this stuff in. It doesn't feel like that at all.
Well, they didn't do a midichlorian count on Fred Krueger, which is, of course, a reference to how George Lucas made the Jedi powers, the Force, in the prequel series a measurable scientific thing. But, yeah, so that's like I said, once again, you can check out that on our site. We have a post up for it, The Confession of Fred Krueger. So is that everything you'd watch this week?
Yeah, pretty much. A couple episodes of Portlandia. The new season hit Netflix. Not horror related at all, but I think so. I was, you know, out of the country. I had to get out of the country for a while because of some copyright issues on YouTube. So,
So then slightly related to this, Derek and I recorded a video blog for the site we did on Wes Craven's A New Nightmare, which I wasn't really thinking about this, the Confessions of Fred Krueger coming out. So we looked at New Nightmare because it popped up on Netflix. So it's like, oh, let's talk about one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And, I don't want to go too much into it because we cover it in the video blog that's going up this week, but it's a movie that doesn't get a lot of attention these days. I mean, I think most people like it because when people talk about the franchise, it's typically one of the more liked movies in the series. People usually say it's like their second or third favorite out of all of them. And, it's kind of a meta movie and something that would totally and perfectly fit in today. And even like it was released in 94, if it came out a few years later after Scream hit, where people were more kind of primed for that kind of movie, I think it could have been bigger at the box office.
yeah.
Because I think in the video blog I misstated the gross. I think I said it was only like 14 million, but it was 18 million was the domestic gross. So it was the lowest grossing movie of the franchise. I think ultimately it ended up making its money back, but definitely a movie that's a little bit ahead of its time when it came out.
Well, another thing too about the money though is like as far as timeline goes, was it kind of like a dead period of the franchise where it had been a while since the movie was released, or was it like right in the midst of all the sequels where it's kind of like they kind of over milked it,
Well, I mean, it was after the sixth movie, like Freddy's Dead. And it was during a period of time where they tried to put together a Freddy vs. Jason since like the late 80s up until it finally happened in 2003, I believe. So it just took forever for that series to happen. So you had that movie that came out and then Jason Goes to Hell. And that was just kind of in a dead period for horror where stuff wasn't doing very well.
Jason Goes to Hell.
Such a good movie.
I like the first 5 minutes of it.
Well, I think
Because that's almost, I feel like the first 5 minutes is almost meta in a way. At least at the time, it felt like it to me, because you think you're watching a traditional Friday the 13th film, like, okay, girls in the shower or whatever. I was younger. Like when this movie came out, I'd rented it as soon as it came out on video. And it's like, oh shit, they trapped him or whatever because they know his game, like they understand it. So that was that felt a little meta to me at the time, and I really enjoyed that element of it.
Yeah. I mean, so Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare came out in 91, so this came out a few years after that. And I think, it was just kind of diminishing returns for a lot of these franchises. You get into the later entries. So, but it was...
The bad thing is the New Nightmare is actually fairly good, comparative to... Now, granted, I have not watched every single Nightmare on Elm Street in the franchise. I've watched the first 4, so I can't really talk about 5 or 6, but, it's definitely better than 2, which I'm not a fan of 2.
I don't think most people are. I've been meaning to work my way through all of those films. I just haven't really had the time. But I watched a lot of them piecemeal when I was younger, renting them on video. Just, at a certain point, it was just, there were so many and they had different titles and stuff. So you just started renting whatever the video store had. Like, okay, this week I'll rent a Nightmare on Elm Street. Next week it'll be a Friday the 13th film, and watching them all out of order and just, not that you need it to really for those to get any enjoyment when you're 8 years old, but still.
I always remember watching the Friday the 13th movies because me and William back when, I had to be 7 or 8. We would go through summer periods and just rent all these movies. And I know we watched all the Friday 13th, but I don't really ever remember watching the Nightmare on Elm Streets, But just, I guess something with the Friday 13th just kind of stick a little bit better with me than the Nightmare on Elm Streets. And I don't know if it's because of that or just because there's so many more. I get there's quite a few more Friday 13ths, right? There's 10 or 11 of them.
I think there's 11. Are they up to 11 right now with the remake?
Because let's see, Jason Takes Manhattan was part 8. And they made Jason Goes to Hell, which is 9 and 10. So there's 11 of them.
Well, and then Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah, so if you include that,
13th will be the next one.
yeah, so there's 12 movies that have the character of Jason in it. And two, like, the Friday 13th movies, kind of like the first one and I think the third one were the only ones I ever really saw much on TV during, like, AMC's, like, horror marathons in October. They didn't play a lot of the later sequels, mostly just because I don't think people were too crazy about them, so they didn't pay to get the rights.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so you can check out our video blog that'll be coming out this week where we discuss a little bit more in depth the new Nightmare. And that was pretty much the only other thing I really watched this week.
Yeah, I was so busy. That's all I really got to watch outside of The Visit.
Yep. So before we get to that, we can briefly discuss just a little bit of news. So the trailer for Michael Daugherty's Krampus was released this past week. And if you're not aware of who he is, Michael Daugherty, he directed the Halloween anthology film Trick or Treat, which if you haven't seen, you must go watch now because it's very good. But his newest movie, Krampus, is about the character Krampus, which is kind of, like an actual mythological thing people talk about. That's kind of like a dark, evil type Santa. And it has a new cast in it that has Adam Scott, David Koechner, Toni Collette. And just the trailer for it looks like it's going to be a blast when it comes out.
Yeah, he's just working his way through the holidays, isn't he? So the next one will be maybe a New Year's Eve, even though there's been plenty of those.
Maybe he should make one of those holiday theme movies for Gary Marshall, like
the romantic
Valentine's Day
Yeah.
or New Year's
But
Eve.
everybody dies at the end.
Yeah.
That would be great. Not marketed as such or anything. Yeah, I didn't watch, again, I didn't have a solid internet connection where I was at for a week. So I knew you'd posted the trailer on the site and I didn't watch it. And we got back Friday and pretty much came home, did a couple things and went straight to the movies to see The Visit with you guys. So that was the first time I saw it was in the theaters there, which was, I almost asked you if they showed the trailer for that when you went to see The Visit, but then I remembered you guys were sitting there right next to me.
The Visit.
Yeah, the trailer looks pretty good. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in anything that has like Adam Scott in it. Kind of makes me want to watch it anyway. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how his character is in that.
Good Adam Scott horror double feature will be this and Piranha 3.
Yeah,
Or Hellraiser 4.
oh, God.
Or not.
Yeah, no Hellraiser.
There's a podcast that he's on where he's talking about, it's actually one where they talk about U2, but they almost never talk about U2. I think he actually mentioned like that he was in a shitty Hellraiser movie, so even I don't think he cared much for it. All right, so I think that was the big trailer for this past week.
Yeah. Any other news? Like I was barely paying attention to it this week. I feel like there was
a little bit more news that came out about the Halloween Returns movie, and it was essentially not much of substance. Like it was like an interview with the director that was like a 2-part audio only video that was missing a section that was posted on YouTube. Everybody made a post about, and he's essentially saying that like Halloween Returns, like if you're a violent entity and you're out in the world. Like, what does that mean? Does the violence come back to you? It's like, I don't really know what that means in the context of...
It didn't essentially just kind of like the ramblings of a madman almost.
No, it's just like this. If you sit here and talk on a podcast or get interviewed, you can ramble on and say something, but just, there's more...
So it's not reminiscent of anything Gary Busey would say.
No.
And then I'm uninterested.
Then the director, Marcus Dunstan, said like that at some point he wants to have like a trailer or an image or something that's the Michael Myers mask they're going to use, and they want to get it right, which is kind of crazy because if you think about it, all the movies aside from like the first one, the mask just doesn't look as good. It's like, how could they not have just replicated it?
Yeah.
But
because all it is just like a bleached William Shatner mask, isn't it?
With the eyebrows either painted white or pulled off, and then the hair all messed up as opposed to being like a comb over.
Why don't they just use William Shatner's actual face?
Face off.
He is Michael Myers.
I think Adam may have brought this up before, but yeah, he runs into William Shatner, murders him, slices off his face, and wears it as a mask, like Leatherface.
But so everything he said that the director has said about the movie sounds like they're not going to make another Halloween Resurrection. But until it happens and it's out, you can watch it. It's kind of hard to know how these movies will turn out. But
Well, given the past and history tends to repeat itself, it's probably not good. Like, I would probably... It can't be as bad as Poltergeist, but if it's better than Poltergeist, that's not saying anything either.
well, I don't know that Poltergeist would be much of a measuring stick for these types of movies. Just I wrote a post too about will 2016 be the return of the slasher, because Halloween Returns is slated to come out. They're slated to have the new Friday the 13th. And when you think about the last big slasher franchise film that hit theaters was Scream 4 in 2011. And it didn't do all that well. And the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies that came out in the 2 years prior to that both did okay, but not well enough to make the studios rush to get a sequel out to them anytime soon.
Well, I'm kind of glad that we picked The Visit and we're talking about slasher, because do you think that the slasher's just kind of been replaced by the found footage genre? Because the slasher definitely had its time period, and it seems like it's been a long time since that's been a mainstay of the horror franchise. So now it's more I'm not going to say it's all found footage, because it's not, but a lot of your popular films are the found footage version, style.
It's definitely a big trend right now, and hopefully it's on the downward spiral. But again, The Visit was an interesting take on it.
Well, I think, too, with found footage movies, with horror movies in general, typically what they do is they like to make them on the cheap and target them at a young audience, and then they'll just make knockoffs of what works until it stops working, which is what happened in the 80s and this late 70s with slashers, and then in the 90s again with slashers when Scream came out. But then, it also happened in the 2000s with all the Japanese remakes of The Ring and The Grudge and all the stuff like that, and all the ghost movies. So it's all kind of cyclical.
Quarantine.
Yeah. So could this be could the new wave of the slashers be like Nirvana in the 90s and kind of get rid of all the hair metal band, found footage bullshit?
Well, the thing, the thing I'm wondering is so can a franchise reboot with Halloween or Friday the 13th? Can these big franchises reboot the slasher genre, or will they just be independent entries that either do well or not, and doesn't have much effect on what else is getting made?
Yeah, if they're going to be trendsetters or not.
Because the franchise, or not the franchise, but the production house right now that's kind of killing it in horror and is kind of the main place to release all these horror movies is Blumhouse. And they're not really making slashes. They're making mostly ghost movies and things like that.
Which aren't really my thing.
Yeah, but that just seems for less or worse, it's what's in vogue with horror right now. I guess, too, is because those are,
Ghost hunting is so hot right now, Derek.
But it's just I guess it's it's cheaper to do, or there's something about it where or the crowds just go to it, eat more. I guess.
M. Night Shyamalan took The Visit, the concept for it to, I guess, different studios. Everybody passed on it, so he I think he financed it himself or raised the funds independently, and it cost $5 million.
Yeah,
and then he showed, I guess, whoever at Blumhouse or whatever, a rough cut.
Well, because I think
whoever their parent company is.
Well, I think it was Jason Blum, the guy who runs Blumhouse, had told M. Night Shyamalan for years, man, you should just make a super micro budget movie and, we can release it. And then M. Night Shyamalan, like you said, he went off and financed it himself and made it. And then once he got it done, he showed a cut to Blum and he took it to Universal, and they got a distribution deal set up for it.
Which worked out well for him, I think,
Yeah, so I think we can move into, before we discuss The Visit, just kind of discuss M. Night Shyamalan and everyone's experience with his movies. Because he's had a wide range of movies and a career arc that's kind of interesting to look at. Because for a while, he was considered to be the next Spielberg after The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs. People thought, he had a pretty good high streak going. The Sixth Sense made $293 million. Signs made $227 million. And, he was looking to be the next big filmmaker. And then he just had The Village, Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, and After Earth that all, even if some of them made their money back and were profitable for the studios in the end, everyone kind of hated them all.
Now, did you guys see any Wayward Pines? Didn't he produce that and direct some episodes?
Yeah, I have not watched it. I knew some of my friends did and enjoyed it. I just hadn't had time to get into a new show.
It definitely seems like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks inspired.
Heavily inspired. So let's run down the list real quick of his. Do you have his films pulled up? I can pull them up.
Yeah, so the first big
and let's
one-
just say yay or nay if we liked them or even saw them.
All right, so The Sixth Sense.
Very
Yes.
much. Yeah, that
Yes.
scared me for years.
Yes, I like that movie. Unbreakable.
Wait. He wrote Stuart Little.
Oh, he wrote.
Move on.
Yeah, he
Sorry, I
wrote.
didn't
He
know
was
that.
a writer before that. Before he
I
made
didn't know
movies.
that. Okay. Unbreakable. Yes.
Yes.
Really good
Yes.
film.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Signs.
Leg in a cornfield.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
liked it. And we talked about how he kind of puts his the swing away. And
Well, he
how
has
do I
like
phrase this.
he has the deep meaning horror movies.
So what he does is he has movies where he sets up scenarios or character traits early in the movie that he likes to pay off and kind of the
Yeah.
end section and the twist or
and they're paid off very, it's very bluntly.
Yeah,
It's not really hidden or subtle at all, which I'm totally fine with because his films, The Sixth Sense is like a horror film and they feel very light. Like he has a sense of humor to him, at least like Unbreakable and Signs and I don't know, even The Village, some of that, but so I'm kind of okay with that in his films because I feel like he doesn't take himself super seriously.
Yeah, so and Signs is a movie that, I loved 95% of it, just like the last little section. Aliens, their one weakness was water, which is the main element that covers the planet Earth and that most of the matter on Earth is mostly made up of. So aside from that, because I think a lot of his movies, when you break them down into their elements, you could be like, oh, it doesn't all fit together and work. But when you watch it as an experience from beginning to end, they work much better.
Yeah, they're typically fun. Well, some of them are like just fun little rides.
Yeah. All right. So after Signs, he did The Village.
I like The Village. I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters when it came out, but I liked it.
I like the twist in that movie. I know a ton of people just like, this insulted my intelligence. I
the way-
requested a refund.
I think the best way to describe it is they sold us a lie. It's kind of like, with Drive, where they sold it as a Fast and Furious movie and it wasn't. They kind of did the same thing with that movie. It's like, oh, we're going to sell you this, but it's really like The Giver, kind of, in a way, but not a horror movie.
Yeah. So then after The Village, there was Lady in the Water, which I did not see.
I didn't see, and I know generally speaking, Derek, you saw it?
Yeah, I didn't love it. It was like one of those movies that when I had like a trial run of HBO before, that was like on loop. And so I watched it like 7 times and I just liked it least. Like every time I watched it, I liked it less and less and less.
I've had some people, though, tell me I really need to watch that movie and give it a chance.
It's not. It's not.
There's some people that really like it for some reason, but I know
not
it got pandered by most.
Yeah, it's not that it's a bad movie. It's just kind of like now it's been I don't know. It's been a while since I watched it. But it's almost kind of like, from what I remember, more of like a fairy tale-ish type movie.
Yeah.
And I wasn't too crazy about it.
All right. See, so the movie after The Lady in the Water was The Happening, which was
Mark Wahlberg.
I did not watch that because it's like, was it Mark Wahlberg versus The Wind and Plants or something?
Yeah. At this point, The Village, okay, I like The Village, but I wasn't like super hyped up on M. Night Shyamalan. I liked that movie. I had a fun experience going to see it in theaters, and I never watched it again. So at that point, it's not like I was ever like on his junk too much, but I wasn't thirsty for a new M. Night Shyamalan film. So when I saw that film, The Happening was coming out. I was just like, I want to see how the reviews are, and they were not good. So I just did not see it, and I have not seen another M. Night Shyamalan film since The Visit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean, I was intrigued by it, and then I watched like 5 minutes of it, and then I was just like, hard pass. And I watched the rest of it.
So, and that movie was not very successful. It made like $64 million in the U.S. I mean, like, I think worldwide it ended up making its money back, but it wasn't anything that was liked here in the States. And two, so after this movie, there started to be a trend with M. Night Shyamalan movies where his name wasn't very prominent in the advertisement for his next 2 films, The Last Airbender, which I did not see.
Me either, but I know fans of the franchise hated him for directing that film.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it made $131 million in the U.S., and then worldwide it made more than its budget. So theoretically, it turned some type of profit, but pretty critically reviled by everybody who watched it.
I just have Wikipedia pulled up. I don't have like Box Office Mojo, but you said The Happening. Wikipedia lists the budget is 48 and box office 163.
Yeah.
The Last Airbender 150 was the budget and 320 was the box office. So that doubled it, not including marketing expenses and everything else.
Yeah. So a movie that once again, like a lot of audiences hated, but it made, money back for the studio.
And that was a franchise. That was his first franchise he was kind of handed because it had a huge following beforehand too. So it was an outlier in his film career.
Yeah, because it wasn't something that he wrote himself, and I don't know if he found a way to shoehorn himself into the movie or not, but
it says he had a role in it. He was a firebender. Firebender at Earth Prison Camp, uncredited.
It does not sound promising.
So then after The Last Airbender, there was After Earth. Welcome to After Earth, starring Will Smith and his son Jaden Smith.
Yeah,
I was willing to give that film a chance if the reviews were good, even though it didn't look like anything phenomenal.
It was Scientology the movie. I have no idea. It's another movie where domestic in the U.S. it grossed $60 million, worldwide $243 million on a budget of $130.
The world is so stupid.
So it probably barely.
The world.
It probably didn't make a profit for the studio. There's another movie where M. Night Shyamalan's name was kind of absent from all the materials, that marketing materials. It was just kind of sold on Will Smith, who wasn't even a main part of the movie from what I heard. So another movie I skipped out on. Mm-hmm. And then that brings us to The Visit, which is once again a movie that like wasn't really heavily marketed on M. Night Shyamalan's name. It was more, the concept of it, the found footage concept, and Blumhouse were probably a little bit more prominent in a lot of the advertisement, going towards teens and the marketing that you saw going out for this movie, because it was a PG-13 movie, which we all saw this in theater, Sean mentioned, at the same time. And when you have a PG-13 horror movie on an opening weekend, you can have some pretty hit or miss crowds that ruin the movie depending on what the makeup of the crowd is. And the crowd for this one we were with wasn't too bad, so it was a fine experience.
And real quick, speaking of his films, I see 2 listed, but I guess they were. I'm assuming they were. Well, the second one was a $6 million budget. Praying with Anger and Wide Awake. I'm guessing you guys didn't see those, right?
Yeah, Wide Awake. I mean, it was on here, Wide Awake from '98. I had seen it and had a lifetime gross of $282,000.
Yeah, and it cost $6 million.
Yeah, so
I just wanted to point those out in case anybody decided to comment.
I'm an M. Night Shyamalan completist, and you did not list the movie for blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But so The Visit, just to give a brief synopsis of what the story is, it's a couple of kids that are 15 and 13, Becca and Tyler. Their mom had a falling out with her parents when she was younger, and they've never met them, and they're going to go spend a week with them visiting while their mom goes on a cruise. And the girl, Becca, is an aspiring filmmaker, so she's going to make a documentary out of it while she's there. And once they go there, things are not as they seem. And that's just a brief synopsis of what the movie is. And two, the box office numbers for this movie. So it opened at $25 million for the weekend, on, like we said, a budget of $5 million. So it's already a pretty profitable movie. It's going to make some money for him, and probably be one of the better like gross to budget comparisons of M. Night Shyamalan's career when it's all said and done. Although it's kind of a micro budget movie.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, and again, this will be spoiler free until we mention.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to see him come back a little bit, and I hope this will ground him from getting away from stuff like. I mean, if it's stuff he wants to do, then more power to him. But stuff like The Last Airbender and After Earth, like it's this typical thing of the directors that have these somewhat moderately budget. I mean, like Unbreakable was 75. I mean, he had some bigger budget films early on, but they kind of get pulled into these other projects and their budgets balloon, and then they don't perform, or it's maybe not. It's maybe not what's actually in their soul or kind of their passion to create, so they're maybe not the right person for it. But this felt very appropriate for him. Like you saw he had a lot of fun with this movie.
Well, I think too the strength of M. Night Shyamalan, which has been seen by his movies that performed well, is kind of contained stories. They're only about a couple of characters. Mm-hmm. And even Signs, even though it's like a worldwide thing, it's really only focusing on the impact of it on one family. And The Visit's kind of another like small movie that really on screen there's really only about 5 characters that you see. I mean, there's a few characters that pop up here and there, but it's really only focused on a few characters. And it's a movie that's a found footage movie. Just if you're a hardcore horror buff and you want to see some limbs get sliced off and full on blood and guts, like this isn't quite that type of movie. Because another movie we talked about recently that was found footage was Creep, and that was a movie like at the end of it, is it really a horror movie? And I think for some people they could have that question about this movie, because I just looked on the social media, like just what people are talking about on Twitter and some of the reviews and like YouTube, and a lot of people liked it, and some people said this is the worst fucking movie I've ever seen. What did I just watch? So, because what's the one guy movie?
Can we have that guy in the podcast?
This movie, blah blah blah. Because what was that one guy? The guy Movie Blob or Movie Bob that had like the really popular review of Pixels, like trashing it.
Oh yeah.
He reviewed this movie and hated it. So there's some people who like it, people who love it, people who hate it. And I think a lot of it depends on the expectations you have of the type of movie going in.
Well, I think this is more of a suspense thriller. Or maybe that's not the right thing, but it's more of a suspense movie than it is like a straight up horror movie.
Yeah.
It's
M. Night Shyamalan, so you expect some type of interesting developments to come to light, especially because it is a little bit of a mystery. So it's
I think
you're wondering.
Yeah, I think that's one thing he did in the movie. I mean, maybe you all differ on your opinions on this than I do, but I think he kept you wondering what was going to happen the entire movie, and it kept it fresh. Like you were always kind of wondering, because it's M. Night Shyamalan and seeing all of his works. There's always somewhat of a plot twist, and you're just trying to figure it out for most of the movie. And I think the fact that he did that kept it kind of fresh and never really doled out, because I really enjoyed it. Like, it was probably one of the. It's not the best movie I've seen this summer, but I mean it's up there.
It's one of the best original horror films this year, I think. That I can think of.
I honestly enjoyed it more than It Follows.
Did you?
Yeah, but for me, this one's more of a traditional. Maybe not traditional, but it's just more grounded a little bit, So I just kind of liked it a little bit better. And also, too, maybe I'm a little partial to M. Night Shyamalan because of his earlier works. And I liked him when I was growing up. So it's kind of nice to have him back doing something that's actually good and worth watching.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I want to see him do good and come back.
Because, like, you think it's some, like, just like Sixth Sense. That was just such a, and I enjoyed Signs a lot, too. So it's just like, it's kind of nice seeing back in that area, and I think with this movie, I think that, and especially too for as far as the found footage movie went, it was actually done really well. So it's kind of nice to see a big name director tackle that type of stuff.
And too, the idea, like, so a lot of these movies, you have terrible shaky cam people running around with the camera just flopping around, and it's partially just a way to mask the budgets and to fill the running time and all this stuff. In this movie, with one of the characters being like an aspiring filmmaker, they actually are able to stage like some decent shots and make it look good. And this isn't a terrible looking film that you can't stand to watch. Like,
You're not looking at grain the whole time.
Yeah, because even though, like, in the movie, I think they portray as if they're recording on like a camera, a Canon camcorder, and like a DSLR. It's actually shot on, like, I think a Red Epic or something. So it's actually shot on nice cameras, and this isn't a super low budget movie. It looks good. And actually had like a cinematographer, and when a director like M. Night Shyamalan actually cares about the framing and everything, and the art design and all that, it actually comes through in the movie. It looks pretty good. It's nothing that I think anybody would have trouble watching that you run into with like VHS viral. Some of those segments are kind of hard to watch, so you don't have anything like that.
I can only take so much found footage at a time. Like, it's not because I do when I watch a film, like, I only have time to watch so many movies. I like to appreciate the cinematography and everything else. So those films aren't ones that I typically appreciate it in, because just by the nature of them. So I don't want to watch them too much. Like, I wouldn't want to watch like even 2 of those movies back to back. I've got to break it up with something else. But
Yeah.
but this was at least more easily to digest than most typical found footage films.
And I think another thing too that they did really well in this is like character development. Not that there's a lot of development, but it was just kind of interesting.
The characters were fun.
Yeah, the characters were fun and they were interesting, and you genuinely cared about them. Or if you didn't necessarily care about them, you found them intriguing enough to actually be concerned about what happens to them a little bit. Which is kind of nice, because a lot of times in these found footage movies, you generally just have douchebags, and you could really care less what happens to them. So, like I said, to me, it's just kind of like a nice thing, because I've watched a lot of found footage films just because that's kind of like what's popular. And for example, a movie I did a review on. It's popular,
so you gotta watch it.
You gotta watch it. But like, I did a review of Infernal, and those characters were all terrible and awful, and didn't like them, and they tried for a long time to develop these characters, and they just weren't likable. Whereas this one, everything just felt kind of organic the way they did it. Like, it didn't feel like they were trying to make you like somebody, or they're trying to it just was very fluid, and it I think the pacing was well.
I feel like every person had a lot of fun with the role they had. Like, even the mom, who is not in it a great deal, because obviously the kids get sent to their grandparents' house. Like, everybody seemed like they were having fun with the roles, especially the grandparents. Yeah. Because they, they got and the kids got to react to this. But another thing about the film, it's funny. It's like almost every scene there's like a good laugh in it. Whether it's from like tension or just genuine humor. Like, there was one like really laugh out loud moment that follows another like really tense moment in the film, and it's just, there's a lot of good moments in this movie that'll make you laugh.
And it's listed as a horror comedy, and from what I'd read, Shyamalan had done like one edit that was much more like comedy focused and one that was horror focused, and then like the eventual final cut that's the movie you see now that kind of blends the two. And like I think it effectively mixes in the humor with the tense situations and things like that, so it doesn't become one of those movies where it's just like an ever heightening sense of dread. I mean, like, they do have things that break it up.
Yeah, it's just fun, and it has a quick pace, and it's just it keeps moving the whole time, and your emotions do go up and down on certain things. While at the same time, it all feels very light, because you care about the characters, but it's the whole time you're watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Like, that's in the back of your mind. It's nothing too serious at all. And the audience seemed like they had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I really liked hearing reactions from this movie. Especially the grandmother, when she would like crawl across the floor or something like that.
Yeah, and it's just like you said, the performances are all good across the board, And, I don't think anything gets tipped too early as to what exactly is going to happen. Because a lot of these movies, like, you walk in and, like, 3 seconds in, you're like, oh, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, this one, like, I think I figured out kind of what's going on, like, pretty early on into it. But it's one of those movies that's so fun that you didn't really fixate on it or worry about it or try to think ahead. It was just, an entertaining movie.
Yeah, if the movie's boring and it has a twist, then I'm just sitting there trying to figure it out to feel like I'm, to be smarter than the movie.
Yeah.
But this, like, again, it was so fun. I wasn't trying to figure it out. I was just wondering what was going to happen. It intrigued me, but at the same time, I was just enjoying the movie as it went along. So I didn't try too hard to think much about it. Because I knew, I was like, I'll just let it unveil itself because I'm just enjoying this ride as it goes along. And I'll probably definitely watch this film again. Like, I feel like this film, if this would have been a movie made in the 80s and it would have been like not a big hit and kind of just like, one of those films that some of the ones that we cover that are just cult classics but weren't big box offices or just kind of lost or whatever. I think this would have like it feels like it would have like a huge following,
Yeah. This is a movie, too, where they could have done it as a straight-up narrative film without the found footage aspect to it and had it be, pretty similar to what it was. Like, it wasn't a story that was predicated completely on the found footage aspect because a lot of the movies that are found footage are, like a relatively flimsy premise just to have a camera somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you take away the found footage aspect of it, like you really don't have anything worth watching. Like this one, if you made a normal narrative movie, I think it would be, just as effective. But they use the found footage concept to make it a lower budget movie and, to help cover up some of those budgetary.
I kind of also feel like, though, it made it a little more fun. Like, I think if it just been normal, I don't think it would have been quite as fun of a movie.
There are some good moments where some characters and scary moments too look directly into the camera, and it has a different effect than if you were watching a traditionally staged film. Like when they're looking right in the camera, it's like, oh shit, there's like it really grabbed the audience. I think there's one scene in particular that I'm thinking of, but yeah, he played with the genre well, and he didn't, it wasn't like he just did it. I don't think he did it all the way to be cheap. Like that was probably his inspiration for doing it originally. It's like, hey, well, what's kind of a cheaper way to do this? And then he took advantage of it, I think, and the scenes he built around it and the characters.
Yeah, I think that, and it's definitely one of those movies where, you kind of point to like found footage as being like kind of a wasteland for horror, but this one of the movies I think is pretty good. Creep, it came out earlier like a few months back. It's on Netflix now. Like I think that was another kind of like interesting use of it. Unfriended was kind of a different type of take on the genre. So there's a lot of movies that prove that the format isn't dead if used properly, but just most do not use it properly. So I guess we can kind of go around and kind of give our just overall thoughts on this, or final thoughts before we move on to spoilers. I guess we can start with Derek.
Yeah, definitely probably the favorite of mine. Like as far as horror movies that have actually come in theaters this year, this is probably my favorite. Because I'm trying to think of the ones that we've reviewed for the site, which would be like Insidious 3, what was the other one? The other Blumhouse production.
Oh, Sinister 2.
Sinister 2.
Poltergeist, and It Follows. This was my favorite. I just really enjoyed it. Like you said, it was it had very serious moments, but it still kept a light feel to it. I think it was paced really well, and I think that just even when there weren't moments of tension or just it just felt good. It was just a fun watch. And it went by really fast. And I think, too, like, I don't know how long of a movie it actually is, but it just, to me, is really enjoyable. And it just seemed like the experience went by really fast. I always take that as a good thing because if it goes by really slow, you're usually bored or, But, yeah, I think if you're interested in anything Shyamalan's done before, or you're just looking for a good horror movie to watch because, it's starting to get to be fall out and starting to get to Halloween time. I think it's a great movie to watch. I don't think you'd go into the theater and watch it and come out with anything other than at least liking it. I mean, like you said, Williams Rich and stuff were obviously some people didn't like it, but I think there's a lot to like about it. I don't really think that there's anything in the movie that like I would want to go back and change. It was, I don't know. It was probably one of my favorite movies I've seen of the year. Like, not the top, but out of all the horror movies I've seen this year, it's by far my favorite.
And to be fair, though, the horror films in theaters, there hasn't been a lot of good standout ones.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of good standout ones. I mean, I guess, like, I guess the standout for a lot of people would be It Follows. Whereas, like, I thought It Follows is a very good movie. But both of these movies, I'll say, like, as far as rewatching them, I know for sure I will rewatch The Visit. I have not rewatched It Follows. But I just still feel like The Visit is just a little more fun with what it is. And also, I'd really love to see the pure comedy version just to
yeah,
like,
that would be a fun DVD, special feature.
Yeah, hopefully they include that on that.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like, again, considering theater has been filled with mainly remakes and sequels this year, it's just, if there would have been a lot of original horror films that come out this year, yeah, maybe I wouldn't be talking so highly of it, but I'm just kind of like thirsty for a good original horror film. And not that there hasn't been some of those that are direct to video or whatever, because there has been some good ones, but you see something in theater, it's a different experience. And again, because I'm an M. Night Shyamalan, I liked his earlier stuff. I'm kind of happy to see him back in a certain way. But definitely one I think people should check out. And it's something I want to show my little cousins too, because it's like the whole thing about going over to your creepy grandparents' house. It's just a fun movie. Like, that's a fun concept because most people have grandparents, it's like we've talked about with some of the slasher films like Halloween and stuff. It's something a lot of people can relate to. And this is too. So it's a fun movie where you get to see actors having fun with their roles and Shyamalan having fun with the audience at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to echo what everyone else is saying. I think that it's a fun movie to watch. It's one of those movies, where it doesn't feel like you're just sitting there for forever. It's, relatively, quick and easy watch. It's not one of those movies that has you immediately, like in a sense of dread or something. It has fun moments and nice character beats that kind of give you a little bit of insight into their background and how they're looking at certain items. And I think we said too, like, the found footage aspect allows you to get some, fun reaction shots of characters to things that are happening to them or around them. And, I think this is definitely, kind of M. Night Shyamalan's strong suit, which is focusing on kind of like, the specific impact of something on a, family or a small number of characters, and not being some, multi-dimensional space sci-fi movie or, some huge budget thing. So I think, an effective little thriller like this is something that's kind of one of his, strong suits, and hopefully he can, try to approach some more movies like this. But it's definitely a movie that proves, that found footage isn't dead if used properly. You can't have everything be somebody like looking into the camera and Ghost and something like The Gallows, or, you have to have something going on with it. And like all the acting's very good, and the movie looks good too for being a found footage movie. It's not a detriment that it's found footage. It actually looks pretty good. So I guess we can.
I feel like the sound design was really good from what I remember too.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I think that's another strong suit to the film, is even though it's found footage, which can limit atmosphere. Sometimes it adds to it in a certain way, but the sound design was also really good. I'm just touch on that real quick. From what I remember, which we saw this, I don't know how many days ago now, but yeah. I watched several movies, a few different movies in between the time. So,
and too, like a lot of, like, I don't think it's in a spoiler to say, like, in the trailers, like, there's the grandpa tells him, like, bedtime's 9:30. So, like, at nighttime, like, the sound design is very nice and, helps set the atmosphere.
And it has those nice Kubrick-esque from The Shining titles like Monday,
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday. Like I love that too. Like there's just a lot of little fun things about this movie that it's worth seeing. Like you may not like it, you may really like it, but yeah, don't get your expectations like through the roof, because in this modern climate there aren't a lot of original horror films that actually make it to theaters.
Yeah,
That turned out to be pretty good, but keep an open mind about it.
because I think it's like a fun movie to watch. It's not going to be like my top 5 or 10 of anything. It's just, a fun movie to watch that I'll probably go back to again. And especially if they put those other versions of the movie on the Blu-ray, I'll be looking for that.
Yeah.
But, so I think we all liked it a bit. Now we can move into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, now's the point where you can duck out.
And please duck out, because it's a Shyamalan film. Like that's kind of the fun reveal, and I feel like some people are going to listen just to spoil it for themselves. But you'll do yourself a disservice. It's in theaters. Go see it. It's don't ruin it for yourself.
Yeah, and as always, if you are liking the podcast, make sure you go on iTunes and give us a review. You can also see all the stuff we're putting out at housebythevideostore.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vine, YouTube, Vimeo, and other services. All those links are on the site. And if you want to see specifically what I'm doing on the internet this week, you can find me at Will_Droid on Twitter.
And I'm at Blevins Sean on Twitter.
And I'm at MetaWorldDerek on Instagram.
Twist Instagram.
The twist.
Bum, bum, bum. All right, so now we can move into spoilers for the movie. And so, like, some of the big things I've seen people hate on about the movie. So that movie Bob guy, his review is like, there's literally a scene where a character who is germophobic gets shit shoved in his face. It's like, really? That's the big problem you have with the movie?
Yeah,
It's pretty gross.
Like it's gross, and that was kind of like a moment that in the theater had everyone like having a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah, people made a lot of movements with their body when that happened. And again, it was like a funny moment. It didn't like rub it in your face or was too gross, but it was gross enough.
Well, I'm glad you brought that scene up though, because like when the grandpa, all right, because they're doing full spoilers, the kid he has a condition where he freezes up. Like he talks about like one time he's playing football and he didn't make a tackle because he's froze. So when the shit hits the fan, literally metaphorically, like he freezes up. So the grandpa has a problem where he shits himself, and so he like shits himself in the kitchen, and he just starts dropping his pants. So you're like, what's he gonna do? Because that was the problem.
This is the whole movie. This is the whole movie. What are they going to do next?
Yeah, pretty much. But like that was one of the more like tense scenes because the sister's somewhere else and she can't get to him, and the
This
kids,
is after the reveal.
yeah, and it's just like, and the kid just gets shit rubbed in his face, and that's what it was. But you thought like something terrible was going to happen. I was like, man, don't tell me there's going to be like some type of like terrible rape scene or something.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what you thought was going to happen. Because here,
You didn't know, and then it went into the humor element, which again, it kept it light. It didn't. Yeah,
Well,
he would have done something sexually to him. It would have got real dark and changed the tone of the film. But
and another great part of that scene was like, oh, you're the one with the germs, aren't you?
Well, and two, like, so the big twist reveal is that, and this is something that, like, a little bit into the movie, I figured is like, this is probably the direction they're going, just based on the things they have specifically omitted to this point, was that it wasn't their actual grandparents. It was some crazies from a mental hospital they helped with that escaped and killed them.
and he earns it through the film because you're like, oh, that makes sense with all the clues that are dropped throughout, which I enjoyed, and I appreciate that it wasn't just some random ass twist, which Shyamalan normally earns it.
Yeah, it wasn't something out of left field.
But one thing I love about it too is, to me, I feel like this was like a classic twist. Like
Yeah.
it's just something that like
one of those.
Yeah, it really, it's how it felt, and it's just kind of nice to have that because all these other movies always try to like go over the top and just have this crazy, ridiculous story. And this one was just like your classic, like urban legend. I just felt like you've been told the story before, and it was just kind of nice to get that again. Because
again, like I said earlier, it's like something that happened. Not that you would expect it. Like this is a weird situation in the family, but it's almost like Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah,
essentially, and it's like it could happen to anybody. Anybody's grandparents could be murdered, and then somebody else could be in their house. Not that you wouldn't know it, but
But to me, it was just it was just such a basic, nice twist that it actually, I think, was more impactful than been something crazy. Because like during some of the interviews, like the grandma talks about some like crazy alien stuff, and I was like, oh, don't tell me this is gonna be some type of alien. Because like
this is the Sign sequel you didn't know existed.
Yeah,
The Visitors.
Because it was the movie was so all over the place, and the grandparents like. One thing I like too, kind of talking to like the Stanley Kubrick stuff, where it was like Monday to like the first day they met the grandparents, they were pretty normal, But like as the days went on, they just got more unusual, and just I guess too, because since they were removed from the mental institution, let's just assume they were on medication. So I'm thinking, well, maybe as they got further removed from the medication, they started getting crazier and crazier and just.
That's a
weirder.
good thought. Yeah.
That's what I thought from it. Because you remember, like, they seemed like they had their stuff together the first day, and then as days went on, like, they walked in. And this was actually in one of the trailers where they walk in, and the grandpa's, like, got his mouth on a shotgun, and he's like, oh, I was just cleaning it. Which I think that was almost like a comical type of.
Yeah.
The way that it doesn't seem like it would be comical, but the way that it was handled was kind of.
Yeah.
And then shit barn.
And then, like, one of the scenes was kind of, like a standout for, being somewhat inventive and kind of fun was they're under the house, like under the crawl space, kind of just crawling around. And the grandma comes down and is very quickly running around chasing them, kind of like scaring the shit out of them. And then once they get out from under the house, like, she walks out like, oh, I was just playing with you all. And then, like, her dress is ripped up to her ass cheek so you can see her butt.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning, referencing earlier when it goes from this like, this suspense and tension to like laugh out loud humor.
Yeah, so
it's just it walks out. It has a balance that works so well, and he can change on a dime, and like Tarantino does that well when he changes emotions on a dime from one thing to another, and that's so fun in movies when directors can pull that off.
Yeah, man, and I think this one too, like the twist wasn't too far out there. It was kind of earned and made sense in the context of the story. Mm-hmm. And, like once, because one of the other plot points is the grandma gets like dough or something on the laptop's webcam.
Oven cleaner.
Which, makes no sense when you think about it. Like, why would you do that? But then, so then like once they finally get that cleaned off and they're video chatting with their mom, they like, holding up the laptop up to the window to show her the grandparents because she hadn't seen them in like 15 years. And then she's like, those aren't your parent or your grandparents. So then like from that point forward, like that it's like escalated and like the tension is ratcheted up, but it still has nice, funny moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like the awkward Yahtzee game they have, which is like one of the most awkward moments of the movie. And like the grandma has sundowning, is that what it was called?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's like a form of dementia where like when it gets dark out, she just kind of goes crazy essentially. Maybe that's not the medical terminology of it, but anyway, that's what happens. So like they deal with that throughout the week, which actually has some of the creepier scenes. Like the first night the daughter goes out, Becca goes to get some food out of the kitchen during the night. Well, as she's walking down the stairs, the grandma walks by and is like projectile vomiting all over the place. So she just like runs back in the room, and like one night they open the door up and she's just like butt naked scratching the wall, and there's just all. And then the one night they open the door and the grandma's like running through the house, was crawling around and jumping.
Yeah, that had the audience screaming during those moments,
especially like the next day when they made fun of it. Like, it was just like a good fun movie. Like I enjoyed a lot of the stuff about it, and but like you said, it had the tension, but also almost immediately had the comedic relief, but it worked. Mm-hmm. You know, because I feel like if somebody's really in that situation, that's probably how it would really go. You know,
this is a little off topic, but Nicole brought this up during the movie. But, you know, you're talking about the Yahtzee game when they knew that, you know, it has been revealed who they were. They weren't their grandparents, and they're making them play Yahtzee.
Yeah.
I worked on a short film for one of Nicole's friends that was in some type of film class, and it was about an old lady who like would get like younger kids and drug them and make them play like Yahtzee with them and stuff, and like try to keep them in their house drugged up to play them. And that was like part of the film, so it was kind of funny to see that in this movie. So it's totally, you know, again, it feels like this Let's Tell You've Seen Before. You know, old people just wanting, kids to be around and to enjoy their company and stuff.
Well, and before like all that stuff hits the fan and they know that they aren't their grandparents, they leave a camera out overnight to see what the grandma's doing, and she, immediately sees the camera and goes and gets a knife and goes outside their door, and like at that point, I'd be like, nope, we're going home.
Yeah, that when she grabs the camera, that is like such a good moment, and that's like a fun, playful moment as far as playing with the found footage aspects to it.
Yeah, so I could see some people not liking it. If I guess that, like, if you saw any of the advertisement for it, like, you would have to kind of know what they're making, because it's not a movie like Drive, where the movie itself was amazing, but the advertising for it kind of sold you something that it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So people went in wanting Fast and the Furious and got like more of a meditative, violent, brutal movie.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, I think the advertising was pretty indicative of what the final product was.
It was, even though the advertisement was funny, to a degree, like the humor where she's like, "Can you get in the oven, please?"
Yeah.
Like, it was still funnier than I thought it was going to be, which I enjoyed. Like, I liked that it was so funny. But some people, I feel like some people just want to be scared, and they only want to be scared. But I'm just not scared that much when I watch movies, So I'm one that wants some humor into it, because if it's all serious, I don't buy it, because most of it's boring to me.
Well, if they can make me care about the characters and put them in a dangerous situation, that creates more tension than a bunch of jump scares or Bagul showing up with a ghost kid or something. I mean, because like when people talk about the movies that scare them, it's like, what actually scares anybody? Like, Insidious 3, not to give any spoilers, but like that movie had some very tense scenes because you kind of like the characters and something like impending doom was happening. Like that to me is more pulse pounding than just having a creature on screen or somebody get their throat slashed from behind or something like that.
And at our age, like who's scared of that anymore? Like when you've seen a lot of people get killed on screen, your tip. I feel like me, at least, I'm looking for something more, some other type of stimulant, because it takes a
economic.
lot.
Your bank account's empty.
It takes a lot to scare me, and not to say I don't enjoy it. Like, I like it. It's just many people don't do scary right. They don't do it well. They imitate things they've seen before, and they just can't make it work.
Or they forego actual, character building and things like that for just jump scares.
Yeah,
and
they'll just recreate some scenes they've seen from other great horror films and think that that's all they need to do, when that's not it at all. They don't understand it.
Also, I guess my final thought on this is that we've dealt with a lot of movies recently with children in the horror movies, and a lot of times they're either like so terrible that you can't really stand them, or they're not too bad. The kids in this movie were actually really enjoyable, I thought. And,
I did too.
And they did the acting. They actually acted pretty well in it too, and they weren't annoying. Like, they weren't weak children characters. They were actually pretty interesting. Like, I
was only halfway on board with the credits rap scene. I was like teetering on the edge there. I was like, okay, I'll give you this scene because I enjoyed the rest of the movie so much.
He partially did two endings to the movie, because he kind of had, so you had like the movie ended with the cops getting there and taking the kids away with their mom, and then they had this scene with like the mom giving details on what happened when she had the falling out with her parents, and then they had the credit scene of the kid rapping. So it almost felt like they had two endings after the movie kind of came to a conclusion. But it earned it to that point, just to go all the way with the goofy rap. But M. Night Shyamalan is actually pretty good at directing kids. If you look back through his filmography, with Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense, and then actually in Signs, I forgot there was Roy Culkin, who was later in Scream 4, and Abigail Breslin, who's been in a number of movies. So he actually, has a knack for getting good, child actors and getting good work out of them in the movies. So,
speaking of that, what's his name from Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense? Apparently, he only made like somewhere around 150,000, I think, in that ballpark. And Bruce Willis did it at a lower rate, I think, so he get like a profit of or a percentage of the profit. So he made like a crap ton of money on that movie because it did so well, and Haley Joel Osment didn't make that much.
If you adjust,
he need that much more than
if you adjust The Sixth Sense for inflation, it would have made $483 million. If you adjust Signs for inflation, it made $329 million. Then the rest of them all kind of fall from there. So, those movies, those two movies were huge movies, and hopefully this movie's grounded them a little bit and showed them, it's nice to do smaller, contained stories that, more thrillers than any type of, more aspirational movie that has a bigger story. So we'll see what M. Night gets up to here in the next couple years. So,
yeah, I'll be interested in his next film again, which has been a long time. I've always kind of kept one eye open on him. I've always kept one eye on him to see, M. Night Shyamalan, and then I don't know, let me see the reviews. Never mind. It's been like that for several films now. So at least now I'll pay a little bit more attention than I was before.
So I think that wraps up this episode, unless somebody else has anything they want to mention.
Yeah, I mean, just, leave us a comment on our website, what you thought about the movie, or on the or on our YouTube page. We post these to YouTube also, but, we prefer you listen through it through iTunes or RS feed and give us a review on iTunes. But yeah, leave us a comment on the website if you wouldn't mind. Let us know what you thought of the film, because it's always interesting hearing people's thoughts on films that are in some ways, I don't want to say controversial, but there's been some high praise for it, and some people that don't like it. So that's why these films are fun to discuss when they're not just a blanket. Everybody loves them.
Yeah, and too, like, horror seems to be something that divides audiences a lot, because there's a lot of movies where you walk out and the reaction's either, oh, I love that, or that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And that's a lot of movies you go to for horror.
Yeah. And I'm one to appreciate something that tries something different or has a different type of feel to it, rather than the same, films like Sinister 2, that are just trying to be scary and have some type of boring character.
Here's a kid with a little bit of makeup on.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that'll bring this episode of the House by the Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.